the gloves come off as the most significant global trade war in almost 100 years could be well underway, says our next guest. With us now live from Denpasar in Indonesia, former U.S. trade negotiator and visiting senior fellow, Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, Yusof Ishak Institute, Stephen Olson. Stephen, so good to see you again. Welcome to the program.
Well, always good to see you, Kathy.
You know, the first time we met was during Trump's first term and first trade war with China. How is his second round of trade wars now looking to you and now involving the world's biggest trading partners apart from China?
The more things change, the more they stay the same, I suppose. Look, Southeast Asia, the Philippines were able to emerge largely unscathed from Trump 1.0. In my judgment, that will not be the case in the current administration. And I think these reciprocal tariffs, as you mentioned, are really going to be a significant factor. Philippines maintains higher tariffs on average than the United States, and in particular on agricultural products, the Philippine tariffs are considerably higher. But I think just to level set on this issue of reciprocal tariffs, it's worth pointing out that referring to them as reciprocal tariffs is actually a bit of a misnomer. What we're really talking about here are reciprocal tariffs on steroids, because the United States is not simply going to raise their tariff level to match that of other countries. They're also going to consider a whole host of non-tariff measures, subsidies, exchange rates, excessive regulation, et cetera, when calculating this the reciprocal tariff. So, for example, a country that maintains a 10% tariff on U.S. exports of automobiles, do not assume that your reciprocal tariff could be 10%. It could be 15%, 20%, 30%, or higher when we factor in these other issues. I'm not suggesting that the Trump administration will pull tariffs out of thin air, but they're really giving themselves a wide degree of latitude here in setting those reciprocal levels.
Stephen, I'm hearing here two things. There's tariffs and there's reciprocal tariffs that we hadn't had before, and the maths that come along it. I got lost there, but if you put it into context, and as you're in an ASEAN country, and we're ASEAN neighbors with Indonesia, where do we stand here in the Philippines in terms of the severity of the impact of both the tariffs and the reciprocal tariffs?
There's a couple of issues. Certainly, the Philippines will be hit hard, but if there's any consolation, I think some of the neighboring countries will be hit even harder. And I say that for a couple of reasons. As a share of overall GDP, for instance, Thailand and Vietnam have substantially higher portions of their GDP dependent on exports to the United States. And the other issue that's going to arise is the size of the trade deficit. And although the Philippines does enjoy a trade surplus with the United States, it's considerably smaller, certainly than Vietnam, Malaysia, and some other countries in the region. So bad news for the Philippines. If there's any consolation, though, some of the neighboring countries are likely to be affected even more adversely.
Yeah, we're not alone in this whole gig. China. I believe would be the next big elephant in the room. The 10% additional tariffs in China come just as the National People's Congress is convening tomorrow on Wednesday, and where President Xi Jinping is slated to lead the biggest political huddle of the year. Having been a trade negotiator yourself, what are Xi's options at this point?
I don't think he's got any alternative other than to respond forcefully to these measures taken by the United States. And China's got a number of different measures it could employ. It could certainly make life more difficult for American companies doing business in China that are largely dependent on that market. It could add countries to the so-called unreliable entity list. And probably the most devastating blow that China could deal to the United States would be to restrict exports to the United States of critical minerals that are important for semiconductors, batteries, and other key items.
All right, but we got a trading bloc that we're in right now, the ASEAN, Stephen. The ASEAN is a trading bloc, and it's been working towards creating that single market and increased trade amongst themselves. Could that be the silver lining here?
Well, I think it's got to be. I think from the perspective of Southeast Asia, you've got to do a couple of things. I think you've really got to look at that internal ASEAN market, eliminate some of the points of friction that continue to exist despite the free trade area, and then also look to diversify, reduce dependencies on the U.S. where possible, diversify trading relationships.
Well, that's the advice there. Diversify. All the best, Stephen. Safe travels where you go. I know that you're going to be heading to Bangkok next for some guidance on trade negotiations there too. Stephen Olson, live from Denpasar in Indonesia.